Hi there, Rebecca Koffler here with Censored But Not Silenced. In today's episode, I will give you a summary of President Trump's plan to dismantle the deep state. I also will reveal to you my own story of how I personally became a victim of the deep state when I worked in the intelligence business for the DIA, the Defense Intelligence Agency, and stories of a couple of my colleagues who also were targeted by the deep state. Everyone knows at this point that President Trump became indeed a target of the vicious operatives of the deep state. His campaign was spied on. He was falsely accused of a bunch of things, such as the so-called Russia collusion, and he was unjustly impeached a couple of times. We know some other stories like that of General Flynn, who at one point was the DIA director, the agency that I worked at. I was in his chain of command. And then when General Flynn became President Trump's national security advisor, he was targeted and he was removed from his position. But there's so many more stories that never, ever reached the news. They never reached the TV networks, but there are hundreds of us, if not thousands, former government officials who became targets of the deep state. But now let's just review real quick what President Trump intends to do to dismantle, to shatter, eradicate this deep state, which is a good thing. Number one, President Trump will immediately, upon entering office, his second administration, he will reissue his 2020 executive order to remove rogue bureaucrats. That's a good thing. Number two, he will clean out the corrupt actions in national security and in intelligence agencies, because these are the people that weaponize our justice systems. They weaponize some legitimate rules, and I will go into detail when I review my personal story with you, against people who speak truth to power. And because these operatives, they perceive those people who are not in line with the narrative, with the so-called party line of a particular agency, they eventually are removed, but they're removed ostensibly legally, because these, I call them apparatchiks. Apparatchik is a good old Soviet word, just means that it's a member of the party apparatus. Number three, he will reform the FISA courts. FISA stands for Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. And originally, this piece of legislation was conceived to be used against foreigners. The goal was to root out foreign spies or terrorists who present a threat to the American homeland. And this FISA warrant was allowing our intelligence agencies to intercept all communications of those people, the bad guy. Well, what happened was that piece of legislation and that court, the FISA court, was weaponized against Americans, against the regime's political opponents. It was weaponized against Carter Page, who was a energy industry consultant and who was a volunteer for President Trump's first campaign. And he was ordered by the FISA court to be spied on 24/7. Actually ruined his, professional career. But what those people were trying to do was they were trying to, through Carter, they were trying to spy on President Trump's campaign. And how does that work? Once they get into the email or the phone conversation of one person, anybody who you speak to, anybody in your contact list, right? Get all that information gets sucked in. It's like a vacuum cleaner. That's what the NSA does, the National Security Agency. And yes, that's a good capability to have when you use it against foreigners. Not only foreigners, but terrorists and foreign spies that plan to do harm to America. But when it's used against Americans, against innocent Americans, that is a terrible thing. And President Trump intends to do away with that. Number 4, President Trump will stand up the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. He will declassify documents that reveal the deep state's spying and other illegal activities targeting American citizens. The commission will investigate abuses of power that have been tearing our country apart, turning Americans against one another. Look, why is President Trump hated by the Democrats and by the liberals? Some of those people know nothing about President Trump. All they do is they listen to the news, like the CNN, and they read the New York Times, which I basically call Soviet Pravda now, which was the Communist Party organ, the official mouthpiece of the CPSU, the Communist Party of the Soviet Union. And they get this wrong impression that has nothing to do with the truth. Number 5, President Trump promised to crack down on government leakers of information, including classified information, who collude with the big tech social media companies such as Facebook, Twitter. Used to be Twitter, now X. Now that Elon Musk took control over that doesn't happen. So Twitter, and it was revealed, they admitted it, that the Twitter employees, as well as the President Biden's administration, admitted that they were actually putting pressure on Twitter and other companies to not reveal certain information, or such as the Hunter Biden laptop or COVID information and things like that. So President Trump is going to do away with that, because those leakers and the big tech, and it's a very powerful conglomerate that someone like Putin or Xi Jinping can only dream of. Right? That those people basically subvert our democracy and subvert freedom of speech by censoring the information, but also by spreading disinformation, such as they did about President Trump. And thankfully, the American people did not listen to those lies, because they elected President Trump for his second term, pretty much in the landslide. And number 6, what President Trump will do is that he will separate the IG office. The IG is the Inspector General's office that exists in every, or in almost every, government agency. And the IG office is supposed to take information, to take complaints from whistleblowers, from government employees who have witnessed some corruption and some illegal activities, and they're supposed to investigate and then remove officials who engaged in that. But what's happening right now is the IG, the head of the IG, is actually reporting to the head of that agency. For example, the IG in the DIA reports to the DIA director. So you basically have you can't possibly, you have the fox guarding the chicken, pretty much. Of course, the IG is not going to do something that makes the director of the agency look bad. It's not going to uncover the deep state. So what's happening is, and it's already extremely difficult to prove something that amounts to a whistleblower. It's very hard to prove that you're actually a whistleblower rather than just a complainant. Most people, the threshold is very, very high for that. As anything in the government, it's very cumbersome. And so very, very few people, almost no one, risks their career to file an IG report, an IG complaint. Because it's very difficult to prove that you're actually a whistleblower rather than not a whistleblower. And then even if you do that, you most likely are going to be eventually fired. And again, I will explain how that happens. Number 7, President Trump will make sure that Congress establishes an independent auditing system to ensure that our intelligence agencies are not spying on Americans or running disinformation operations on Americans using social media. Number 8, he will relocate some of the government agencies and operations away from the Washington, D.C. and to new locations that are full of people who are actually conservative and American patriots. Because with what happens right now, because there's a sprawling network, a web of government agencies in the Washington, D.C., employing people who are very like-minded. They're very, much in line with the party line, with the regime, and it gives them a sense that nothing they can do is punishable. That anything goes. They can violate the law, and they can target people, and nothing can be done with them. Well, President Trump intends to break down that type of collusion. Number 9 is curb revolving door between government positions and the private sector jobs. Again, what happens right now is a lot of government officials who are in charge of regulating companies and are doing favors for these companies in hope that the company is going to offer them a position post their government career with high salary. And so that incentivizes, and that's what's happening, especially in the pharmaceutical industry, called the big pharma, telecommunications industry, lobbying, you name it. So that needs to be completely done away with, and President Trump intends to do just that. And then finally, number 10, President Trump will push for constitutional amendment to impose term limits on all members of Congress. And that is self-explanatory. That is one of the number one root causes, this type of revolving door and that lifetime employment that members of Congress, some of them, such as Nancy Pelosi, for example, the lifetime employment that they enjoy, and they weaponize the system against the American people, knowing that they will never be fired. Now I'm going to tell you a real brief, my personal story, which I actually described in my book. The book is called Putin's Playbook, Russia's Secret Plan to Defeat America. I started each chapter of that book with my personal story, personal life of how I was born and raised in the former Soviet Union, how I ended up in America, served honorably in the U.S. intelligence community, and how I was then booted out by the deep state because I kept providing the warning of what Putin is planning to do, foresaw the invasion of Ukraine by the Russian forces. I briefed the Obama administration, NATO, scores and scores of combatant commands. There are several of them in the United States protecting U.S. homeland. I participated in war games, but no one wanted to hear about that because former President Barack Hussein, as President Trump says, Barack Hussein Obama, wanted to do a reset with Putin. So my intelligence assessment ran counter to the party line, to the deep state's party line. So they ran a very elaborate scheme, a Soviet KGB-style operation, in which they accused me of multiple things, but one of those things was that I was mentally ill, that I was paranoid, because only a paranoid person could envision that Putin is developing a war plan to attack somebody like Ukraine, but also is preparing both a war plan and a plan to target the United States with cyber attacks, space warfare, and a bunch of other things that I described in the book. Well, now the intelligence agencies are actually admitting that that is the case, right? And they're constantly talking about Putin's Russia targeting U.S. Communications network with cyber attacks, but also targeting our elections and this and that. But when I actually predicted that, and I was predicting it way back in 2014 or even 2013, I gave a briefing to NATO in September 2013, just months before Putin's invasion of Ukraine, and yes, and they gave me so the government, the DIA apparatchiks, the deep state, gave me a psychological test, and that they said revealed that I had a mental illness that was affecting my intelligence analysis and led me to conclude that Putin was going to invade a post-Soviet country like Ukraine, and Ian was developing a plan to fight a war with Russia. Well, now, again, like the intelligence agencies admit that Putin does have such a plan, and that plan doesn't mean that they're going to invade the United States. But if we deploy forces into the theater in Ukraine, Putin sure as hell has a plan to utilize cyber warfare, space warfare, even nuclear forces to defeat the United States on the battlefield. Now, I'm going to give you an example. So what they did in this case, in my case, they weaponized the security clearance process. By designating me as mentally ill. Never mind that I wrote a book. I was a rising star, right? Briefing all of these, important people, 4-star commands. And so apparently the person who was briefing all these people was mentally ill, right? So, anyways, so they weaponized the security clearance process. So they yanked my security clearance. And once they do that, you can no longer work in the national security arena. And that's how they do it. It's a playbook. And they make you unemployable. This is why I was unable to work in my field, for which I trained for years. I have 2 master's degrees. I spent years and years on my target, Russian warfighting strategy and Putin. And so as a result, I became a writer and an author writing books right now. Here's another case of one of my colleagues. His name is Adam Lovinger. Adam Lovinger worked for the Pentagon, and his book, and by the way, that's the reason I included my personal story in the book, Putin's Playbook, to clear my name so that it's all out there what these people did. And what DIA do, by the way, they weaponized another process, a legitimate process called the PRB, the Pre-Publication Review Board. Every manuscript that if an intelligence officer plans to write a book, we need to submit that book for a review to the DIA. What they have done was they tried to derail the publication of my book because I disclosed in my book what they did to me. And eventually we published it with all the they claimed that there was classified information. Classified information was not there because if it were there, I would be in jail, right? So, so anyway, that's what they do. That's the playbook. Going back to Adam Lovinga, his book is coming out on November 19th. It's called Insider Threat. And by the way, not all of us have been lucky enough to actually get a book contract. There are many, many people who were targeted by the deep state, and their careers were ruined, and they were not able to find employment in their line of work. And they ended up doing, things like, I don't know, like one person was driving a bus. And by the way, I was witnessing one day at the CIA, I overheard a conversation between the two deep state operatives who said, oh, that, who were participating or were aware of this person being booted out. He ended up driving a bus, and they were just cheering those deep state operatives that's how they ruined that person's life. Another person was also accused, actually somebody I know very well closely. He was working at the DIA, and he was grabbed at an Air Force base. He was handcuffed by security services, accused of being a spy, and accused also of being mentally ill. They bunch in a whole bunch, stuff together, right, to make sure that it sticks. Although, like on the face of it, it contradicts one. Either like you are this extremely smart, sophisticated, brilliant spy, or you're mentally ill. So they charge you with both, right? So how does that make sense? It doesn't, but it just accomplishes their goals. So that guy. And that colleague of mine told me that he was aware of one case. I don't know that particular case personally, but he said one of his colleagues actually, because he was devastated, he threw himself from a bridge onto the oncoming traffic one morning in the Northern Virginia area. Again, those stories do not make the news, but the guy was devastated because you serve your country, right? You risk your life for years, and then the deep state does that to you because you spoke truth to power. So going back to Adam Lovinga's story, Adam worked at the Pentagon, and he uncovered the corruption. There was a contract that Pentagon had with Stephen Helper. Do you remember that name? That's the guy who actually ran an operation or helped run an operation on General Flynn, as a result of which General Flynn was accused of having an affair with a Russian woman in Cambridge. She was a student. There was no affair of any kind, but Stephen made sure that both of them were invited to a round table at Cambridge and were placed together, and they were having a conversation, allowing the deep state to make up that story. And then the FBI went to interview General Flynn. So while Adam uncovered all those illegal activities, and he was trying to bring that up to the higher-ups of the Pentagon. And what happened was they turned on him. He had no idea. Adam had no idea how high that went up. He just thought that there were some rogue elements who were running his operation, while Stephen Helper had a multi-million-dollar contract given to him by the higher-ups. And so Adam then was accused of mishandling classified information, and he was booted out. He was supposed to go and work for General Flynn in Trump's White House, while his security clearance was yanked, and he was made unemployable as well. And so he wrote this book. And then the final one, I'm just going to give you real quick, is Rob Porter. Rob Porter was President Trump's I don't remember his official position, but Rob was giving intelligence briefings to President Trump in his first administration. President Trump did not trust General Kelly. He did not trust Mattis, the Mad Dog guy. He wanted Rob to give these intelligence briefings. And of course, the generals were mad at Rob. And so they started the the deep state started digging from under Rob, and they actually, believe it or not, accused him of domestic violence. They got FBI to convince his ex-wife, Rob's ex-wife, to tell them that he was beating her. You can't make this up, right? Why did they do that? So that they could yank his security clearance. Well, here's how Rob cleared his name. Rob was not lucky enough to get a book contract, but one of the brave journalists who worked for the Daily Wire interviewed Rob himself, his ex-wife, and many people who knew both. And believe it or not, on tape, Rob's ex-wife admitted that the FBI got her to say that he never beat her. And if you know Rob, you would know immediately that that guy would not hurt a fly. He wouldn't beat anybody. So the Daily Wire story, you'll have a link here in this podcast. So these are just 3 cases of how these people, that's the deep state, how they weaponize the system. It's their playbook to remove people who can expose their shenanigans, who speak truth to power, who give proper intelligence, not something that somebody wants to hear, such as that you can be friends with Putin, or you can be, that Ukraine can win the war, which is, by the way, another hoax right now. So here you are. If you like my podcast, please subscribe. It's on all types of social media, X and Getter, Truth Social, and YouTube. Send me a note, and please check me out next time. Censored but not silenced. Rebecca Kofler. Thank you. I'll catch you next time.